all doing. So I'm here from Machine Metrics. We're a company that is trying to crack into the industrial IoT world. So we pull data directly from machines and assets in manufacturing environments, and we create dashboards and reports and analytics and all sorts of fun things with all that data that we're acquiring. So as you can see from this slide, manufacturing, it's still, as far as I know, America's largest industry by dollars and by employment. But it is by far the least penetrated market for digitization. So we see these huge companies. We all know of enormous companies that are in these spheres, and there's nothing really in the industrial IoT market right now that's of any size. So it is a blue ocean of opportunity. And as I get out there in the field and work with manufacturers, it just becomes more and more apparent of how much need there is in the marketing or in the manufacturing world for these kind of technologies. So I'll show you a little bit about ours, which, well, let me change slides. Let me represent. There we go. So as I said, we pull data directly from machines. We started off in the subtractive metalworking environment, so mills and lathes and grinding machines, and that's still where a lot of our customers are. Here you can see an example of one of our dashboards on the shop floor with one of our manufacturers, put it up on big screen TVs. We have over 24 dashboards, hundreds of reports, so guys on the floor can see how they're doing, they can see what their expectations are, and hopefully have an improvement on the utilization and the efficiency of those machines. So across our customers, we usually see a 15–20% improvement in utilization just by providing the transparency. So that's no other added value, diving into the data. That's just showing what's going on and letting them execute on that data. So systems like this take manufacturing, which right now is very much a reactive business. These guys, usually when I ask them, how many parts did you make this week? They'll say, well, let's go down on the floor and count. Where other industries, I was saying earlier that the grocery industry, they know exactly how many of each thing they sell. They know how much of each thing they sell after a rainstorm to males aged 18 to 22. Yet in this industry, the decision makers don't know how many parts they made, if they're behind, if they're going to make their deliveries. And that's really where there's just a lot of low-hanging fruit value. So we pull data directly from the machines. So we actually tap into the machine's controls, their PLCs. So on newer equipment, we get tons of data. On older equipment, we hook up a PLC to the machine, hook up some sensors, don't get as much data. We also have the ability for operators to contribute to the system. So if the machine's just sitting, the machine doesn't know why it's just sitting. So we're going to ask the operator, we're going to ask the people on the floor, what's going on with this machine? Why is it down? And we've really found that that's an area where decision makers and managers in manufacturing environments really struggle. My background, I worked in machine shops. I remember many years ago, I was running a cell of machines. My boss comes down on a Friday afternoon with a box in his hand, and he said, I need to ship 400 of these parts right now. And I said, well, we've got 30. And he said, why? This is a Friday afternoon. I need to ship this to our customer. We're already a week late. And I realized in that moment that if I had told him the top 10 reasons why we were behind on that job, it wouldn't have constituted 10% of why. And that's just the nature of this business, and I think it's the nature of most businesses. Something happened at 9 o'clock, and then at 9:05 something completely different happened, and then at 9:10 something else happened. So what this system allows you to do is take all those little 5 and 10-minute things that are the majority of the time that's holding you back, put them into silos so that there's something actionable. That day I told my boss that it was the second shift, that there was something wrong with the machine, that the material was bad. I just kind of gave him some scapegoat things to make him go away, and it worked. He went away. But there's absolutely nothing he could change about the way that he runs his business based on the information I gave him. So that's kind of the hole that we're trying to fill. So we take that data from the machines and from the operators and create tons of reports. So pretty much any report you can imagine, hopefully we've built it. If we haven't built it, our system is completely cloud-based. We have tons of software developers. We turn around reports for our customers in 2 days to a week, depending on the report. So we can build all sorts of reports, custom reports, pretty much anything a customer would want. It's easy to do. Also, because it's cloud-based, the system is accessible from any internet-connected device anywhere in the world. So our customers use this system on phones, tablets, computers. They're out on the golf course. They can keep track of how their shop is going. They're on vacation. They can babysit their machines. Another common one is they want the machines to run lights out when no one's there in the factory. This way, someone can babysit it while still being home. They can figure out what's going on with the machines. If it goes down, they'll get a text or an email alert telling them to go get that machine back online. So I tried to make the kind of sales pitch on the product as quick as possible. If you want to talk more about how we integrate into the machines or the product, I'll be here until they kick us out. So those can all be long conversations, and I thought I would spare the crowd. I did want to tell a story, a cool thing that happened to me recently, which is I started Machine Metrics about 5 years ago. Just a few months ago, I was visiting my parents up in Vermont, going through some old boxes with my dad, and he pulled out this one box and he said, "This is a bunch of your grandfather's stuff." And in it was this really cool stopwatch. And I was like, "Dad, that thing's awesome. What is that? And why does it go hundredths of a minute instead of 60ths of a minute?" And he said, "Well, your grandfather worked at a business up in Springfield, Vermont called the Jones and Lamson Machine Company. And the work that he did there was he was a time master. So what he would do is he would stand next to a guy at a machine with a stopwatch, and he would time him. He'd be like, make a part, because nothing was automated then. This was back in the 50s. Make a part, and he would time it. He'd keep track of it all, and he would set the standards for how long it would take to make those parts. And at the time, Jones and Lamson, and before, was doing a lot of military contracts. But it was a business that was founded on this really innovative lathe that their founder invented, called the Hartness flat lathe, turret lathe. So kind of the very first turret lathes came out of this company in northern Vermont. And this innovation of this new type of lathe and this new way of building it grew Jones and Lamson to a couple thousand people. They had 4 plants in the city of Springfield, Vermont, which if you go to Springfield, Vermont now, they're all empty with trees growing out of them. I really started to reflect back on, my grandfather worked at this plant, my dad worked at this plant. I thought it was really cool that my grandfather was a time master, and I unknowingly built a digital time master, an automated digital time master for the manufacturing industry. So that's just kind of a cool coincidence. But the thing that I really started to think about was, there's one other little story I'll tell, which is that after the Vietnam War, when my dad got back, he had a lot of trouble getting a job anywhere because it was hard for veterans to get jobs then. And he asked my grandfather, hey, can I get a job at the plant? Grandfather had been working at the plant his whole life, pulled some strings, got my dad a job there. So my dad's running a lathe, and one day my grandfather comes by and says, hey, when I was your age, I ran that same exact lathe. So that was 20 years ago. And so the fascinating thing about that to me was that they, in the late 1800s, invented this really innovative thing, and they were able to build a big business off of that. They were allowed to be a force of a business for 60 years or more, almost 80 years. And I thought, if I stopped innovating Machine Metrics, how long would we be a viable company? Is it even a year? So there's just this, and I'm probably preaching to the choir. I'm telling you guys something that you already know, but maybe it's a new story to go along with it. But the time scale in which you get to exist in the market with your cool idea, your innovative idea, is quickly collapsing to these guys got 80 years of millions and millions of dollars of work out of it. And for us, if I stop innovating machine metrics, we get a year before somebody passes us and comes up with a way cooler product. So I think that a really key part of IoT and maybe any business moves in the future is that products are becoming outdated and ecosystems are really what people need to be building and what people need to be buying. So something that can constantly be growing and changing with the times. And our software machine metrics, we are always working on it. As you guys, probably a lot of you work on cloud systems. We're rolling out updates to the system every day, new features every day. We're also hiring, if anyone's interested, lots of developers, full stack, everything, to roll out these new features. We're kind of building our company a little bit cloud sourced in that we're asking our customers, or our customers are telling us what features they want next. So we're rolling out those features based on our customer demand, and we're trying to stay that ecosystem that's always changing, growing, and opening to anything, or open to anything. So I don't know, hopefully that was an interesting story. Jones & Lamson sadly closed in the 80s, and one of their main plants, not far from where my parents live, is almost half a mile long. So it's really spooky when you drive past it. It's been just sitting there for almost 30 years. So I think we all need to make sure that we don't make the same mistakes. They never really innovated much past the 60s and 70s. They didn't really come out with much. And there were a lot of Japanese machine builders that were coming out with innovative products that were much cheaper, better service, and wound up killing the company, and thousands of people lost their jobs. So that's it. That's my talk. End on a high note. But. Yeah.
Why Boston?
Why Boston? Because that's where I live. We actually started the company out in Northampton, which is about 2 hours west of Boston. My business partner and I were both out there at the same time. He had built a company and successfully sold it. And I kind of convinced him that this was his next option. So most of our employees actually are former employees from his last company. And we've since grown to Boston because we've tapped the talent pool in Western Mass because it's pretty small. So that's why. But we do have a fair number of remote workers. And
from Cambridge.
Yeah.
Do you use timescale DB?
Honestly, I wouldn't know. I'm not the developer. I'm the machine shop guy. So we got to use something.
Not yet.
Not yet. I guess he'll be in touch with. I'll put you in touch with the right guy.
Are you taking telemetry from the machines themselves? Do you add telemetry to it? And do you retrofit older ones?
Yeah, so it varies a lot based on the machine, based on the age of the machine, based on the control. On newer machines with brand new controls, we get a ton of data. We get over 300 data items from a modern machine, all the way down to temperatures and pressures of motors, how long jobs have been running, lines of code that are running, alarms and alerts, all that. Older machines, as the machines get older, the amount of data goes down, all the way to the point where we get to machines that are sold. We can't get any data from them over serial or Ethernet. And on those, we'll install a PLC with sensors and going right off of the machine's relays to understand what it's doing. So we get as much data as we can. Most of the data we collect on the system we're not doing anything with, but that's the joy of being a data business. You can save everything forever. Data storage is cheap, so we're sitting on terabytes and terabytes of machine data that someday maybe we'll do something cool with.
How old is the oldest machine that you've hooked up, which really is
So what is the life expectancy of these machines?
Yeah, the oldest machine I have connected was built in 1919. It was a punch press, 250-ton punch press. So, so they really run the gamut.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So the global construction industry, building construction industry, is about $10 trillion. What opportunities do you see there? Because I would argue that every machine in the building construction industry is much dumber than a lot of the machines you find in some of these factories. Even though they might not be from 1919, it's essentially worked the same way
Right.
that it was in 1919. So do you see any opportunities there? That's my question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. In fact, we get like weekly inbound leads from construction companies saying, hey, can we hook this up to our paving equipment or to our cranes? And we don't really know what the answer is. As a startup, we're trying to stay focused on the industry that we specialize in right now. I guess the sky's the limit for what equipment can be connected. And that just shows you how few companies there are out there serving these data transparency needs. Because yeah, the variety of companies that reach out to us and say, hey, can you hook up to my thing? It's crazy. Usually we get an inbound lead and we have to Google, like, what does this company even do? We don't even understand this stuff. I don't really have an answer, but it's a very good question.
That's a good answer.
Metrics don't need to be built into the machines. You can build the metrics around them with little IoT devices. So temperature and pressure can just be attached to the side of the machine.
Yeah.
You don't need to modernize the entire system to replace a 1919 press.
Right, yeah, we just added some sensors to that machine and actually added a vibration sensor. So every time the head of that stamp comes down and I think it makes a car door, the whole building shakes. When you're sitting in the parking lot of this place, the car shakes. So yeah, we just put a vibration sensor on there, and whenever there's a huge spike in vibration, we figure the machine made a part. Works great, customer loves it.
Or it blew up.
Or blew up.
Looks like you have a Android tablet there as a display. That's also an industry that changes very quickly. Do you have any issues or experiences with, you get it worked out on this one and then you can't buy that one anymore?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, for like industrial touchscreens, they start in like the thousands, right? So we get these Samsung Galaxy Tab 8s for like $80 a piece. So it's like kind of almost disposable. Even though we've had many of them out in the field for over 4 years now, they work. We put a KB remote on them and stuff, so they are constantly updating to the latest version of Android, and we can actually remote into them and fix problems.
But you've been able to buy the same model for a while.
Yeah, well, and it's since it's cloud-based, it's basically just displaying a web app. So it doesn't have to be this particular device. It can be any tablet. Some of our customers source different tablets. Some of them will only do it with iPads because they say iPads are way more secure. Some will only do it with Windows tablets because they say Windows tablets are the most secure. So it just depends on the IT department. And
So you don't have any sensors going directly to the tablet?
no, that's just,
Yep.
yep. So that's just pulling the data from the cloud. Yeah, sorry.
Do they have the networking infrastructure in the factories, for example, to the Wi-Fi for the tablets?
So we usually do hardwired when possible. Usually there's no network infrastructure. And Wi-Fi can be really hard and also a bit expensive. So I went into one shop. We had installed a Wi-Fi mesh network to connect all their machines. It would work most of the time, and then every once in a while, the whole network would just drop out. And we tried everything. We spent hours and hours and hours trying to figure out what was going on, changing channels, trying all this different stuff, Wiresharking it. And I went and bought a spectrum analyzer, and I went into the shop, and I found out that the thing that was knocking out the Wi-Fi network was a 50-year-old Milwaukee drill. And every time the operator would squeeze the trigger on it, it made this broad spectrum noise that knocked out the Wi-Fi network. So Wi-Fi in an industrial environment can be tricky, though it's really weird because we've installed the same system in what you would expect to be much more noisy environments. Works fine. So we push to hardwired, but we can certainly supply Wi-Fi, and it's mesh. So each machine, each node is a router and a client. So they don't have to be strapping routers to the ceiling and do all that stuff.
I'm just curious with the newer machines that are generating more and more data, are you finding that any of the manufacturers of those machines are starting to compete with you to provide their metrics on top of their machines?
Yeah, a bit. A lot of the OEMs are building machine monitoring platforms. We don't lose any business to it, at least much not yet. The problem is that most of the consumers of their equipment, well, I'll say that the manufacturers, their machine monitoring system will only work on their machines. And we've yet to see a customer that has only one type of machines. It's usually a wide variety of equipment from multiple different manufacturers. And a lot of places are, they got stamping equipment and milling equipment. And we can connect to it all. So it hasn't been a problem yet. In fact, a lot of times it's great because a customer will try the OEM machine monitoring system and say, this is great, we want to do something for our whole shop. And then they'll step up to our system.
Yeah, what kind of rights do you have to the data? For example, can you use the data at one manufacturer to draw comparisons within that?
Yeah, so we've just started doing benchmarking. So for the most part, most of our customers are allowing us to use all the data for kind of whatever we want as long as we anonymize it. There are a few customers that have opted out and don't want us to do anything with their data. And we actually lock that out to a point where we can't even see it. But most of the data we're able to put together and do benchmarking. So this is actually just in the past couple of weeks we've started doing this, where we'll say to a company like yours on the similar equipment is able to hit these levels of productivity. So you're either ahead or behind. So we have done a little bit of that, but we kind of spent the last 4 years or so focusing on learning how to get the data from the equipment. It was much harder than we thought it was going to be. We thought it would take a few months, just pull the data from the machines, make cool dashboards, profit. And it wasn't that easy. It wound up taking about 5 years to build all of the adapters and learn how to do it. So we're just getting started trying to understand what to do with all of this data and how to make it useful, something that we can sell.
One more question.
What's like the largest data volume you have coming out of any facility going to the cloud, and also from a networking perspective, is there a large cost involved in putting maybe a pipe big enough to go to the cloud?
Yeah, so I think the question was, what's the largest data volume that's leaving a particular facility? And the great thing is it's mostly ASCII data, right? It's just numbers, temperatures, position data, part count information. So even in facilities where we're hooked up to 500-600 machines, it's far less than a megabit of bandwidth that we're using. So there's a couple outliers where there's certain controls on machines where you can set the frequency in which it reports data to your system. And sometimes by default that's set to like 10 kilohertz. So sometimes those customers will hook it up and say, all right, we're ready to go. And we start getting all these alarms from AWS that we're spending a ton of money on this one company that's got 5 machines and they're using more resources than all of our other customers combined. But for the most part, it's very little data. Cool. Well, thank you all very much for listening to my demo.
Hey guys, my name's Devin Petikolis. I am this is my talk. It is bringing the cloud to the 4th industrial revolution. Before I gave this talk,